Hello and welcome to the Monday, April 20th Village Council meeting. Judy, if you could call the roll.
Yes, DeVore Leonard.
Here.
Shu.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Samari.
Here.
Pierce.
Here.
Also present is Village Solicitor Amy Blankenship, Finance Director Michelle Robinson, and Elise Giardulo is Acting Village Manager, while Johnny Burns is out of town.
Cool, thank you. Next up is announcements. Do we have any announcements?
I do have an announcement. From the utility department, exciting news, spring cleanup. So annual spring cleanup is going to take place the week of May 4th. So this gives all residents about 2 weeks to figure out what they would like to dispose of. Pickup will occur on each resident's regular trash day only. So it's not every day of the week, it's just on your regularly scheduled trash day. Rumpke will collect unlimited bulk items during that time, but again, only on the regular scheduled pickup day. Residents are asked to make sure any loose items are properly bagged ahead of their collection day. All of this information was shared this afternoon via YS Connect, our official village app. If you don't already have it, I recommend downloading it from the Apple App Store or Google Play. It's certainly the most reliable way to stay up to date on village communications. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I don't know if this is necessarily an announcement, Gavin, but since it was a major occurrence 2 weeks ago, starting with Monday's town hall that Dave hosted, I know basically it looked like the entire community attended it. And really I just wanted to touch it, you know, what he was talking about. His focus was on like a vibrant downtown, local business, art, Keith's Alley, but really it was mostly just about community. And I just wanted to thank him for hosting that event as well as everything that came about the rest of the week. There was a lot of moments that feel like it turned into momentum, starting with the opening, the ribbon cutting of the new YSO and the schoolhouse, leading into former First Lady Michelle Obama visiting Yellow Springs. And I think taking a moment to appreciate his investment and the conversation in terms of what it takes to live in a village like this and his investment and all of our investments. I think we need to take a little moment just to say thank you and to appreciate everything that has happened and that is happening right now in the village.
Cool. I see you're rocking the pin too. You got the YSO pin.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right. Cool. Other announcements from here, and then I see on where, are you Tim?
Yes.
So we'll get to you in 1 second here. Are there any other announcements? Yeah, go ahead, Stephanie.
I just wanted to mention the YS Uproar Community Resource Fair that's coming up. It's on May 2nd. I don't know if the village has any planned booths for that, but it's probably a great opportunity to do some community outreach. I had already asked them about it, but it's been about a month, you know, and I was probably ahead of myself, just wondering, and they said no one had reached out. So if anyone wants to connect on, you know, doing something, at least just having a presence there. But also just letting the community know, you know, that that's open to the public. Be a lot of great information, a lot of organizations there. And that'll be here at the Bryan Center, so. All right.
Okay. Cool. So you're basically saying if there's anybody on staff or anything that is, or anybody on council that's interested, check in with you?
Yeah, they would love to have anybody,
Okay.
or in the community, you know, yeah, just the more people present, the better, yeah, with, you know.
Cool. Okay. Any other announcements? Okay, we have one more announcement from Tim Dawson, Executive Director of the Regional Planning and Coordinating Commission of Greene County, about available services. Tim?
Hey, Tim.
Hey. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name's Tim Dawson. I'm the new director for Greene County Regional Planning. I'm here tonight just to introduce myself to everybody. Obviously, Carmen's your full commission member. I provided you with a menu of sorts. If you're not aware of some of the services that we provide to our members, this gives you a better idea. And then just to let you know that I've given you my contact information as well. So any input on any projects or initiatives that you're setting forth for the coming year, I'm available to contact anytime. Obviously, you know, I'm going to be in close contact with Carmen, but anyone can feel free to contact me. And so this evening, I'm just here to foster that membership and get your input and introduce myself, and that's it.
Cool, yeah, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, come on up. We, in general, yeah, let us know if, come on up. If you've got announcements, let us know before, and then we can get you on the, just so we don't end up with announcements being like everybody come whenever. So just shoot Judy a note, we'll get you added to the list, but go for it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So this is Philip O'Rourke, Executive Director of the Yellow Springs Chamber of Commerce, and I'm excited to announce that the Art Stroll will be coming back to Yellow Springs. It is going to be Monday through October, the third Fridays from 5 to 9. Businesses will be staying open. There will be some experiences, meet the artist, and some other activities that will be happening downtown. So we're very excited about that. For more information, please go to yellowspringsohio.org/art-stroll for all of that. We are calling all artists to connect with downtown businesses. This is supposed to be not business as usual. So our goal is to insert experiences that are centered around art, music, and all of that into some spaces that don't normally carry it. So we're excited about the art-centricness of downtown, pulling on some of the things that have happened recently and keeping it vibrant downtown. So Art Stroll, May through October in 2026.
It's
Thank you.
The 15th, maybe? Is that the third?
Yeah, so the
put it on my
first,
calendar,
third,
so, yeah.
absolutely. So the first, third Friday is May the 15th. So the first day that Art Stroll will be back will be May the 15th, which is a Friday, third Friday in May.
Great.
Cool, thank you.
Philip.
And there's a, we'll get it in petitions and communications here in a minute, but that was in the packet too for folks who want the information as well as going to the website. Any other announcements? All right, next up is the consent agenda. I could get a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
So moved.
First and second, maybe? Carmen and Angie? If there's a combo move, we'll just split them up. All right, any questions? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, next up is the review of the agenda, the time where we check to see if there's anything that would be added or subtracted or questions about the remainder of tonight's meeting. Anybody got anything? The one thing I'll just note is that on the follow-up discussion about the Housing Committee, it says DeVore Leonard, but that's actually Shu. And then same thing, same times, et cetera. Anything else? All right. Next up is petitions and communications. Angie, if you don't mind.
Yep. We have Barbara Mann regarding handicap parking, Philip O'Rourke regarding Art Stroll, Jacob Schmidt regarding East Enon safety concerns, Laura Skidmore regarding opposition to parking expansion, and Mayor's Clerk regarding mayor's reports.
Great. Okay, so next up, we're at citizen concerns. I'm going to read my page now. Citizen concerns are set aside as a place for citizen comment on anything you wish to share for council consideration. If your comments are regarding a second read ordinance, they should be made during the public hearing for that ordinance. Public hearings are clearly noted on the agenda. Persons wishing to address council at any time during the meeting, including citizen concerns, should provide first and last name and association with the village, like resident or business owner or former resident. Please try not to repeat previous comments. If something has already been shared, you can note agreement. In the interest of time, you'll be asked to move on if a topic has already been covered at length. Council wants to provide a thoughtful and responsive answer to questions, which can be difficult in the context of a meeting, so you are unlikely to receive a response during the meeting. At the conclusion of citizen concerns, if there are clear, concise responses or information to provide immediately, we will do so, and we will identify any follow-up needed for concerns or questions that can be addressed. Are there any citizen concerns? Go for it.
Hi, Relita Hildebrand, Village resident. The first thing I wanted to say is that With the discussion about property taxes and the doing away with property taxes, the League of Women Voters of the Greater Dayton area has been reaching out to different municipalities and asking if there would be an interest in doing a partnership with those municipalities to do an information session about what property taxes pay for in that municipality and what the impact of not having, of cutting property tax would be. So I'm throwing that out there. I'm on the board of the League of Women Voters of the Greater Dayton area, and if there's an interest in that, I'd love to coordinate that with you all, or whoever the best point of contact is, Elise on the staff, to talk about the impact of property taxes. I also wanted to mention that that we're experiencing, again, this growth in the cost of electricity. It's also a big discussion with data centers. And I had mentioned before the idea of doing some sort of an information center, town hall for the village on specifically electricity, what's driving the cost, what are the different fees that are causing the price to rise. So I was hoping maybe that would be something that could be, again, brought up so that to educate the community about what's driving the cost of electricity and if any impact would occur if we did curb the, did support this sort of ban on data centers. I also asked if there was a possibility for the village to do some sort of proclamation or something, maybe not a proclamation, I'm not sure what the actual legal term would be, to say we don't want to have any data centers in Yellow Springs, and perhaps petition Greene County for the same because of the huge drain that it has on water and electricity, and I'm not sure if that's gone anywhere. And then finally, we're talking about housing and affordable housing, and the last thing I wanted to mention was that, again, I know we as a village give a lot of money to Home Inc., and I've said from the beginning, and I'll say it again, it's a single nonprofit. I don't think our taxpayer money should be funneled to one specific affordable housing nonprofit. I think if there's a desire to put that much money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, into a particular nonprofit, it should be on the ballot. It should not be something that is, especially since we're operating a deficit, I don't think that's something that you should be spending our taxpayer money on. Honestly, I think it's something that if we wanted to, we could support them by donating to that nonprofit as individuals. And I think if we're going to pay taxes that go to them, that we should have a chance to vote on that or not. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I like that sound.
I was
Ben.
going to say something.
I think that sounds nice.
Yeah.
At the planning commission, we got into, it was like, for me, a little much. This sounds like a better way to wake up or to end a.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I like it. I like the sound. There's also the music that they get played off at like the Oscars. That's what happens on my timer.
2 weeks, you have 2 weeks to put that together.
Anyway, are there other citizen comments? Okay, we will move on to public hearings and legislation. Let's see. Do we need to do the no, because we don't have it, or we don't have any. Okay, so the first one is first reading of ordinance 2026-06. Judy, if you don't mind, by title only, please.
This is repealing and replacing Section 252.06 Personnel Policy Manual of the codified ordinances of the Village of Yellow Springs, Ohio, and approving revised Personnel Policy Manual.
Okay, can I get a motion?
Second.
Thank you. Elise, I think passing it to you.
Yeah. So for the last year and a half, the village administration, which includes the village manager, our law director, police chief, our HR director, our finance director, and myself, have been reviewing the personnel policy manual. So our goals in doing this review were to really clarify the existing policies, align the manual with current practices, improve recruitment and retention, especially in today's world, and modernize and update the language where we felt it was needed. So tonight is the first of 2 readings for the updated personnel policy manual. Included in the packet is a red line version of this document, which I have affectionately referred to as Frankenstein's monster because it is wild to look at. But that red line document was also shared with staff for review. Employees were invited to provide feedback and participate in open office hours to discuss all of the proposed updates. The feedback received was limited and did not identify any significant concerns with the proposed revisions. We found that comments that were received were generally spread across a variety of policy areas rather than focused on any one thing, which signaled to us that there wasn't any widespread concern with any one particular issue or change. So overall, the current version reflects the updates that we identified through the administrative review process. This is a first reading, so I don't think any action is required tonight, but we're happy to take any questions or comments from council.
Any questions or comments? I guess the only comment I'd throw out is I don't, it's possible I missed it, but the like memo that sort of summarizes,
Yeah.
like, here are the changes,
Yes.
maybe put that into the next packet.
Yep.
You know, I think for the most part, it feels like these are sort of things that we're cleaning up, things that we've identified over the last, years that it makes sense to kind of get straightened out. The one thing I think was, maybe on the like most notable side was the parental leave component.
Yes.
Where, we've had, it's almost feels funny to say.
I know,
right?
yeah.
We've had no policy.
No.
And so we're trying to find a balance of giving some recognition and need for, for some time for, time off when becoming a parent, and trying to find that right balance as a policy, dynamic. So I think we're on the right track with that.
Yeah.
A month feels like it's on the right track. I think, not sufficient, but finding the right balance of factoring in, our costs as well.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great move. And that's for, if you're giving birth to a child or adopting a child as well, so.
I made this note in the PPM, and we might have touched on it, maybe it's a finance committee question, but is there a mechanism in the PPM, I wrote, for finance to revisit the utilization, like data after year 1?
Yeah.
So that we can like report back so that we're not, I guess the way to say it, it's like, so that we're not locked into assumptions,
Yeah.
right? I don't remember if I brought that up in finance or not, so just before the
That's
next.
great. Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, see what's being used, see what employees are taking, yep, makes sense.
Other comments or questions? Obviously, it's a first read, so we'll come back again. Anything else? Okay. We don't need to vote, so I think we're hearing you. We'll talk about it again next meeting. All right, next up is Resolution 2026-19. Judy, if you could, by title only, please.
This is approving a one-time grant to the Yellow Springs Senior Center as appropriated in the Village of Yellow Springs 2026 budget for the purpose of purchase of property.
Great, thank you. Could I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. So it looks like, Amy, you're going to do the introducing?
Yep, that'll be me.
Okay.
Hi, good evening. So in one of your budget sessions last year, the discussion was had about appropriating $32,000 for the senior center. At the time, there was some discussion about it being for operations or something relatively vague. And we did discuss at the time that when we got into 2026 and they actually came for the money, we'd have to work within the policy that council has in place that dictates what money council gives out to different organizations and for what purposes. And so in working with the senior center, they've identified a need for the purchase of property. So this money will be tied to a potential purchase of, is it 108 Cliff Street? It's in the resolution. I didn't bring it up with me.
Yes.
And you'll remember maybe a year and a half ago, council, some of you will remember, council, there was some money awarded to TLT for the purchase of an easement. And council had TLT enter into an agreement with the village that if the easement was not acquired, the money would come back to the village.
or actually never go to them until a purchase agreement was signed, and then come back to the village if the easement wasn't acquired. We're going to do the same thing here with your approval. We're going to ask the senior center to enter into a simple agreement with the village that when there's a signed purchase agreement, the money can be paid out, and then if the property is not acquired, the money will come back to the village. Any questions?
So the money is, there's no, the money for operations isn't a thing that we can do.
Yeah, you've got a policy that really asks that you tailor it more specifically. You're not to be paying for overhead,
Right.
wages, things like that, yes. So the more it can be tied to a particular event or a particular purchase, it's much easier to lay that trail of breadcrumbs of where the money went.
Any other questions or comments, either for Amy or overall?
I mean, I think if the solicitor views this as, I don't know how to say it, like, as long as we're on record, I'm very pro senior center and supportive of the Cliff Street project. And I have no objection really to the $32,000. But it is a meaningful shift from what council appropriated funds to what it's being used, to what it would be used for now. So as long as the record shows that this conversation was fully had and that the capital kind of framing is clean under like the Ohio code, then I have no qualms about it. But I just wanted it to be on the record that we do understand that this is a shift from what was approved and that I am okay with this shift, but as long as the solicitor has it tight, then, yeah.
I think we're on the record,
Yeah.
you know, like
Yeah,
whether we
very
want to be or not. I
Yeah,
think
very
we're-
much so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. No, I,
Take this off the record, Riley. Riley, this off the record.
I think it's also been a useful clarification of those requests, right? Like moving into the future, that we've clarified operating expenses is not something within capacity.
And I'd be happy to share that policy with council if you'd like to look at it.
Yeah.
any other questions or comments? Okay, this one we have to vote on.
You do.
Okay, so I guess, Judy, if you don't mind calling the roll.
Okay. Shu,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Samari,
Yes.
DeBoer Leonard.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, next up, it feels like it was too fast. Was that the end? That's the end of public hearings and
Yeah,
legislation?
don't say that.
Take it while you
We're
can get
moving,
it.
we're moving to special reports.
Be the
I'll have comments
Be
on
the
this.
water.
I'll have comments on this when we get to future agenda.
Judy
Okay.
said if we were having too much fun that the meeting would go long.
Right.
And I said, actually, if it's fun, I think we'll,
Oh, we're doing
we'll
great.
get through this.
Be the
We're
water.
doing great.
Be the water.
All right, so next up is special reports, and we're going to start with quarterly financials. Hello, Michelle.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
So we will start with the slides. You also have the report, but we'll just go over the slides. Has a little more narrative in it. And then if you have any questions, just shout them out. So the first slide here, it's just a comparison with the revenue and the expenses for the first quarter of 2026. We're actually up 37.6% in revenue from 2025. And our expenses are slightly down a little bit, but that's because the projects haven't really started. So that's just the main comparison overall. So the next, we're going to go into the revenue. The revenue for the general fund for 2026 first quarter is pretty much in line with what we've budgeted. Yes, I said we're ahead, but that's because we budgeted on the conservative side. Our income tax was almost $140,000 better in '26 than in '25, so that's a plus. Like Rolita was asking about property taxes, they're in line, so we'll hope that we still get the property taxes. The next slide is the revenue for water. There was a typo I caught this morning for the revenue. I had 130,000 K better in your packets, and I've changed it. It's 103,000 better than 25's revenue for consumer fees. For the other revenue that's coming in, we're ahead of the 2026 budget, and it's mainly due to the new construction tap fees. For revenue for electric, consumer fees revenue, we're about 220,000 better in '26 than '25. And the other revenue coming in, we're higher due to a reimbursement that we had of around 49,000. It was an aid to construction. And then the sale of RECs, as you see, we did one in '24. We're doing one this year. It was just approved at the last council meeting, so we have not done that sale yet. The revenue for sewer, we're in line with the 2026 budget, but we're $21,000 better than first quarter last year. And that's in the consumer fees. And then the tap fees have dropped a little on, it's mainly due to the new construction of the sewer lines. The revenue for parks, there's nothing really in pool because we haven't started the pool season. You'll see that ramp up quarter 2. For the other, we did receive, and I think Elise will speak to it later, we received an $8,000 Miller Fellowship Grant from YS Community Foundation. And then if you see in the transfers from general, I noted the reason why we didn't have anything in '25, it's because we didn't do those till the third quarter of '25. So that's why you see that dip there for '25. The revenue for streets, you see that that's higher, as again, we didn't do the general fund transfer in '25, but for '26, it includes the $346,000 transfer from general fund. For solid waste, we're in line with our 2026 budget, but as you see, we've slightly increased every year, '24, '25, and '26. And the revenue for storm is also in line with the '26 budget, and you can see those have had real slight increases every year as well. Police pension, you'll see in 2024, the reason for the high amount there is we had a $70,000 transfer from the general fund. I don't know what that was planned for, since that was before I started, but that was just something I wanted to make note of. But if you look at '26 and '25, we're in line budget-wise. And then for the affordable housing, that also in '24 included a $240,000 transfer from the general fund. And the reason why that was done, I did find that it was because of moving loss in place from the general fund to affordable housing. And as you can see, we're in line there for the following years. Are there any questions on revenue? Okay, we'll go on to expenses. For the general fund, all the expenses are currently operating in line with the 2026 budget. You figure a quarter, we should be around 25%. So we're either at or just below that on some of these. As you can see, I noted the transfers and advances, same as always, weren't done until quarter 3 of 2025. So that's why it's showing 0. Then for the water expenses, all the expenses are running in line with the 2026 budget for water distribution, the water treatment, and the debt. The debt's a semi-annual payment, and that stays the same with the loan payment. For electric, all of the expenses are running in line with our 2026 budget, just slightly higher than 2025, but I don't see any big increases so far for 2026. For sewer, also again, we're running in line with the 2026 budget. As you can see, the sewer collection is slightly higher than '25 and slightly lower than 2024. And then for treatment, it kind of shifted. It's slightly lower in '25 and then slightly higher in '24. And then, as I said before, the debt on that is a consistent number. For parks, we're pretty much in line with the 2026 budget. Pool expenses so far have included fence repair and installing and upgrading cameras out in that area. You will see more expenses coming for the prep of the pool season. Then for streets and solid waste, we're behind 2026 budget. Most of the major projects have not yet started. Most of those expenses you're seeing, though, are wages and operational needs. And then for solid waste, we're in line with 2026 budget. We are running 13,000 higher than 25, but that's due to Rumpke's increases. Police pension, these expenses are related to payroll. They will be charged and adjusted as needed for 2026. The affordable housing, most of the expenses for Q1 have been for the loan payments on Lawson, first half property taxes, and then the insurance premium for Lawson Place. So that's why you see that much for first quarter, especially compared to 2025. Expenses for capital fund, pretty much all of them are in line with what we've planned for 2026. I have noted a couple changes. So as you see, water capital, none of the projects have really started, but we had to replace the water line at Birch Hall, and so we're just waiting on reimbursement for that. And then you see the big fluctuation in 2025 on expenses. That was due to the House Bill 168 water line project that we did. But as you can see, sewer capital, electric capital are pretty low. And then on the next page, the other capital funds, the pool, the reason for that increase for the first quarter, it's to paint the pool to get it ready for opening season. Facilities is pretty low so far for the first quarter. And then for equipment capital, I brought it to supplemental probably in February that we had an unplanned expense where we had to replace the heating and cooling unit at Walnut Street. And I believe that is all.
Great, thanks. Are there any questions for Michelle?
It's a lot.
And we're going to do a little bit of a summary on the Finance Committee a little later that goes a little bit bigger picture, but
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
So the water line that was replaced at Birch, we're waiting for reimbursement. So when that goes away, then the 16K will go.
We'll do
When
a
that shows
supplemental to
up.
put the money back.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, and that's been a couple months?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for Michelle? All right, great. Thanks, Michelle. On this one, we need to do a vote. So all those in favor of approving the financials, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right. Next up, we have the treasurer's report. Judy, go for it.
Oh, that's me. Okay. As of March 31st, 2026, I keep doing that. The village had under active investment $17,220,528. That's a cash balance increase of $1,049,574 since the last report given in December. And that is cash balance, not investment, or not interest. So just, yeah. The total investment number is derived from combining Star Ohio account, Raymond James account, and West Banco account information. Just for comparison, interest on investments for 2025 was $656,665. I gave you a little info on how short-term interest rates moved around, Feds adjusted things in 2025. Right now, we're just kind of hanging out in the middle of the hurricane as all of the things happen with the administration. But because these are government funds, they just kind of stay right there in the center of that hurricane generally, and we haven't moved much at all. So cash balance as of March 31st, West Banco, $8,181,536. Raymond James, $3,568,836. Star Ohio, $5,470,156, which gives you the number I read to you above, the over 17 million amount. You've got cash balance information there that is as of the end of last year, which was what I made your comparison with. Next page, you have annual comparison by month, which basically tells you that cash balances have gone up in every area except in Star Ohio, where we dropped a bit, which may mean we moved money out of Star Ohio and over to West Banco, which is a thing that can happen as easily as kind of flipping a switch. Those two accounts can move back and forth. Interest income for the first quarter of 2026, West Banco, $68,241. Raymond James, $29,995. Star Ohio, $51,051, for a total interest income in the first quarter of $149,287. Raymond James has not yet given us their quarterly fiscal report. That should come in the next couple of weeks. So those totals are the last totals you saw, which were last quarter's. I'm sorry, I'm just going to finish, though, so hold on. Treasury rates, not a whole lot of change, except in the one-month rate, which, oh, wait, I'm sorry, that's incorrect. I'm sorry, I transposed that incorrectly, because that is not 3.72 on the one-month rate. I'll get you that correction. And then West Banco sets the village interest rate at the Star Ohio 30-day rate. And that rate at the end of March 2026 was 3.77. So our sweep account is earning about the same as the Star Ohio 30-day rate. And that is 3.77. So you're going to see a drop in interest income for your next quarterly.
Great, thanks, Judy. We don't typically take questions during the council meeting for, other than the citizen concerns component. So if you have a question.
Oh, yeah, my bad. I've never been to one of these.
Okay,
And,
yeah,
I don't even watch the YouTube thing.
okay. Yeah, that's okay. No, it's, the main time would be during citizen concerns, and if you have a question for, like, for instance, the treasurer's report, then Judy is the treasurer, you could follow up and ask her.
After.
Yep, exactly. Are there any questions for Judy? Okay, thank you, Judy. Next up is the manager's report.
I'm sorry, can I just ask my question for Judy right now instead of calling it up?
No.
Sorry, no, it,
No, I cannot.
yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, manager's report. So tonight, I'm gonna be presenting this on behalf of Village Manager Johnny Burns, who could not be here. So the cover of the report features a really great photo that Ben Gunther here took from the grand opening of WISO. Council and staff were able to attend that event. It was a great day, perfect weather, great turnout, really strong turnout. And so it's just exciting to see WISO continuing to have a home here in Yellow Springs. So congratulations and thank you to all who were instrumental in making that project possible. Other things, tree trimming this year. So the village is currently seeking proposals from qualified contractors to handle tree trimming. This year it will be in section 4 of the village. Thank you for the map, Ben. So anything within the yellow highlighted boundary line is where tree trimming work will be occurring. Proposals are due April 27th, and we'll be bringing a resolution to council on May 4th for contract approval. In other news, the village has been recognized by the American Public Power Association for exceptional electric reliability in 2025. This award reflects a very high level of performance, and we're proud to receive it, so great job to the team. And speaking of recognition, our electric department has also been named a 2025 Safety Award of Excellence recipient by the American Public Power Association. This is the 8th consecutive year that that department has received this honor. So a big thank you to Superintendent Ben Sparks and the entire team for their continued focus on safety and excellence. Great work to them. A big thank you to the Yellow Springs Community Foundation for a $10,000 grant supporting improvements at Gaunt Park Pool, as well as the Swimming for All program, which helps provide pool passes to increase equitable access to village recreational facilities. Also want to give a big thank you to Lucky Bunny Tattoo, who has donated to Village's Parks and Rec Department for the 2nd year in a row. We really appreciate their continued support. I want to take a moment to flag some spam emails that are once again being sent impersonating village planning and zoning staff. So these emails are requesting payments or wire transfers that are tied to zoning permits. So if you receive anything suspicious, please check the sender address carefully and keep in mind that all village emails end in @yellowsprings.gov. So do not click links or open attachments, delete the email, and please report it to the village 767-7202. The Spring Grapevine, our quarterly newsletter, has started arriving in mailboxes. A big thank you to our local USPS for helping ensure delivery to every address in the 45387 zip code. Here's what it looks like. We are celebrating Earth Day, so this is our green edition, and it includes information about the upcoming Earth Day events as well. From the police department, in April, Officer Duff was recognized for providing critical care during a cardiac arrest, which directly contributed to a successful outcome for the patient. We also welcomed Officer Mark Stenson to the department, who brings extensive experience in campus policing. And a reminder that this Saturday, April 25th, is National Drug Take Back Day. So YSPD will be taking medications for disposal in the lobby. We do also now have a box that lives permanently where any residents can drop off medications, but this will be sort of an all-day event. So if you have anything, large items, please feel free to bring them by. From the Finance Department, the 2024 audit has been officially certified by the Auditor of State, marking the successful completion of the audit process. So great work to our Finance Director, Michelle Robinson, for all of the work on that. From the water plant, our water loss for April was 12.67%, which is the lowest we've seen to date. So that's really exciting news. From the Streets Department, staff are continuing pool preparations as we get ready for the season, and the pool will open on May 23rd. Yay. Youth Center, we're averaging about 26 youth served per day with about 18 dinners provided each night. And a thank you to Amy and Jason Bailey for their donation towards operating supplies. Finally, digital media. The Village Facebook saw quite a notable increase in followers, which we believe is tied to the coverage of WISO that Ben did. We also saw a gain of 69 new users on YS Connect. So if you do not have the app, I will say it once again, please download it. And then finally, I'm going to end on a really cool update around the Tree of Knowledge out at the library. Blind Eye Restoration has been giving this wonderful sculpture a clean. This is the first time it has been cleaned since 1992, so we're looking at over 30 years. And so I think, yeah, Angie, as you sit on the Library Commission, I think they'll be very excited. Quite a lot of work. I think there was a blowtorch even involved at one point. Yeah, it's amazing. I had no idea what goes in there. It is. Yep.
They don't use any poly. They use wax. I mean, they do it the good old fashioned way.
I walked past them twice that day, and they were out there from sun up till sundown, I think. Yeah.
They do a lot of the City of Columbus's restoration of all of their sculptures and statues and stuff.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. No, Ben and I were talking about it, and we're like, I mean, it makes sense as a line of work, but we'd never stopped to think, I mean, all of the sculptures, they need to be cleaned.
Yeah.
So, yeah, fantastic work. So that's looking great. Yep, and that's all from me. Any questions from council?
Anybody? All right, thank you, Elise.
Thank you.
Okay, so next up is old business. So we've got 3 chunks of time in here. The first one is going over board and commission goals. Then we'll do follow-up discussion about, from the Housing Committee, or it should say follow-up discussion from the Housing Retreat, and then clarification and prioritization of housing goals. So we'll start with the board and commission goals. So this was the thing that everybody filled in, the sort of priorities and goals, and then wanted just to spend a few minutes going through each one and checking to see if there are priorities or things that you would like for that commission or committee to be taking into consideration. So I think I'll just go in the order that's on this spreadsheet, and we'll just try to kind of move through them one by one. And yeah, just checking if there's any questions or thoughts. So on Planning Commission, so you'll note that there's not anything in the priorities focus area because we thought it was going to be on the agenda at the last Planning Commission meeting, which was this past Tuesday, but now it's on the agenda for the next Planning Commission meeting, which is in May. I forget which day right now, but in May. So this would be kind of the moment if you're like, here are things that you would like for Planning Commission to consider. Now's a great time to bring it up, because then I can make sure that it gets on the agenda as part of the discussion at that meeting in May. So any things that people were hoping Planning Commission might prioritize or think about?
Municipal land trusts, MLTs, land banking.
I'll be the person to go ahead. I'm not familiar with it. Want to give a brief overview, because I have no.
It's a municipal land trust, so
Okay.
we have, Home Inc. is a community land trust.
Yeah, that, okay.
So municipal land trust is run by municipalities. Same.
Similar, same.
Yeah, same model, just run by municipalities. Or a municipality.
And so Carmen, can you say, what's your thinking on how or where the line is of things that we would talk about in planning versus talk about at council versus talk about
I
at...
think that planning, I mean, I just heard from one council member that they weren't familiar with the municipal land trust. I think that's a thing that planning can take a look at. I mean, and then obviously it'll be discussed in council. We'll get it up here too, but I just wanted to throw that out there. You asked, and that's my answer.
Got it. No, I'm just trying to think about, as we're going through these, how do we delineate where things go? And that, I see what you're saying. So then I think the question that we have as a group is that something that we want the group to prioritize? So why don't we go through first and take any thoughts, and then we'll go on sort of brainstorm anything that would go in, and then we'll go back over and ask folks, is this something that we want to prioritize? Are there other things that you were hoping that Planning Commission might consider this year?
We talked about looking at zoning code. Is there overlap with planning commission there?
Oh, yeah. There's all this.
Zoning, review of zoning code in relation to housing goals.
Yeah, and we can push that even further into the economic development realm as well, but until I think we have it, before we clean up our own house,
Yeah, right.
our own categories, I didn't want to push anything onto planning, but as we move forward to economic development, I think we'll bring planning as well. But I don't think that's necessarily the priority for right now.
Okay, so I'm going to write down economic development and then scratch it out. Is that right?
Yeah,
I
just
got that
put
right?
a-
Okay.
Question mark, little question mark, little.
Yeah, okay.
Soon.
Okay, so, fellow council members, what's your take on, so the municipal land trust question, I guess my inclination is to want to talk more about it as a group here. I don't know enough about it to know how much I think we should spend time on it. It's the kind of thing I guess I would have thought we would have talked about in the housing retreat or in some form like that, where it's like kind of an initial pass of, what is this and how much of a priority is it compared to the other things that we want to do?
So what do you need, what do you, it sounds like you need something from me, because I'm the one that brought it up. So what do you need from me to bring to another council meeting? And I wasn't at the retreat, as everyone here knows. What do you need from me?
I also don't know about it, so I think it'd be helpful to have a memo that would describe what it is, where
Okay.
it's being used, maybe the application for Yellow Springs. But
Okay.
I've also never heard the term, so
Okay.
more learning.
And
So
if-
memo,
if-
got it.
Yeah, and if possible, any potential cost associated with.
Okay. So Carmen, do I hear you saying a memo as in, are you game to work on a memo and then bring it back to council? And
Yeah.
then we can obviously bring it back to planning whenever, but then we can, I think in general, and Judy, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think it's super helpful to planning when we collectively say, hey, we want, there's a majority of council that wants you to work on this. And so we'll try to screen things here first and then send them over that way.
So you need it, so what do you need from me? And we agree that it's a memo.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it would just be as a general rule, if there's an idea that you want to bring up, then just bring it up in sort of future agenda as a thing to say, hey, I'd like to talk about this thing, and then
Got it.
work on whatever the idea is. Okay, so then zoning codes, I think this, came up in the retreat. It came up a bunch in the past at Planning Commission, and we always kind of kicked it down the road. So I think this one's pretty clear. Does anybody disagree with
So
asking for that?
what are we gonna say about zoning codes? Are we talking about inclusionary zoning? Are we talking about how we treat ADUs? What are we talking about in zoning? Like, is it a broad overview, or is it specific parts of our zoning code?
So what we talked about at the retreat was that we would essentially get some more clarification on those kind of questions. We talked about having a meeting in June. And so I would put this on going to be on the agenda, but not yet clear because we haven't yet given direction of which zoning code review do we want to do.
Yeah,
Is that a fair summary of our
I think we
conversation?
talked about, which we'll get to later in tonight's meeting, clarifying our housing goals, and then having a review of zoning code with those goals in hand and saying what helps or hurts achieving these goals. And I think we talked about pain points or pressure points. But yes, having a concrete list of goals and then saying this is what we're talking about when we're looking at the zoning code.
And that really is something that only your planning and zoning administrator can do in terms of fleshing that out and then bringing it to say, okay, here are the areas I've identified which can then be discussed. But that's something that could happen fairly soon, I feel like.
And also, yes, of course, the planning and zoning administrator, but that doesn't, we should also be thinking about what we want to see.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I'm just going to report back to planning that we know we want to talk about zoning codes, but hold tight for a little more direction, probably after the meeting in June. And then this will be just a regular, I think for all these, just my stock on every one of these is, if at any point you're like, hey, here's the thing, I want one of these commissions or committees to consider, you're welcome to bring it up in future agenda, create an agenda item, talk about it, just like with any other topic, and then the appropriate commission leader, liaison can take that back to that group for, starting to work on it. If there's anything else on planning, I'm going to keep moving. So Environmental Commission.
That's me, I'll be
Yeah.
over there in a second. Let me get this done. So let's see, so we have the purpose, chair, how it's led, how it's organized, our members. And so this year, working on community education around sustainable building practices, conservation development, and watershed protection. We're going to start education in June, and it's going to go through December. So workshops and educational events for the community, informational materials and resources, and partnering with Little Miami Watershed Network is really important. And also talking about, we will be talking about what a data center would look like in Greene County. Thankfully, we don't have the topography, which is awesome, but talking about what that could look like, and like I said, partnering the Little Miami Watershed to get information out to the community.
Cool. Thoughts or questions or additions for Environmental Commission? I'll just throw out the one that I think was on your radar before, and I asked for the updated Excel version, so I didn't see the data center part, but I'm glad to hear that's on your list. So it might be on here, but I just don't see it, which is the REX rec. We talked about REX last time, and I think if there could be sort of a one-pager or a two-pager that sort of says, here's our,
Okay. So just general information about what they are and how they work in the village, or what they are, like, what are their parameters?
Yeah, I think what they are, how they sort of, the policies that are related for us, so like we have the 85-15 rule on how the money gets spent, and you could, just a sentence or two of history, and then I think the core question is sort of what is
This is something I'm going to have to work with a staff member for also. So, that's something I can do, but there's going to have to be some staff input.
Okay. Yeah, and so then I think it's just like, what is I don't know how to put it, like moral dilemma, that we talked about at the last meeting of like, what is the reason to do it or not to do it, and what is our sort of analysis of how we've arrived at what we've arrived at.
So you want to talk about are we talking about like, so now in the memo also, not only what do we use recs for, what are they for, what do they do, but what's the moral quandary?
Yeah, that's what we were.
So the moral quandary.
I'm not sure that's the right words, but you know what I mean. That's what we talked about when we talked about the recs, is sort of acknowledging, hey, we've factored in the sort of pros and cons, and here's where we landed.
Okay.
I think moral quandaries
Okay, any other environmental commission questions or things you want them to consider?
I like this, I'm excited to see the work around the sustainable building practices, and I think around the community education piece, right, is also just how do we start to integrate this better into our own work at the village and our own choices, and then for the community at large or the bigger businesses that work here who have more resources to invest in these systems that we know are ultimately good for the whole community. So I definitely think there's community education, but there's also something about the application of when possible.
The things, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think we already kind of talked about it, so I kind of skated over on the recs rec, but is that okay with folks? Cool. All right, we'll keep moving and go to Public Arts and Culture Commission.
All right, so we have the purpose and leadership structures here. Current members, we're just going to do the focus and the priorities. Right now, we're doing the America 250 programming. It is going. We started the speaker series already. We are signed up for the end of May. All this stuff will be to have a cookout. And there's also some plans to reach out with YSAC, Yellow Springs Arts Council, and other local arts organizations and individuals to feature local artists on some upcoming planning and programming. Let's see, our outcomes and deliverables are already kind of happening. So educational workshops and talks around the semi-quincentennial. There'll be entertainment events like the cookout that's coming, and then the concert that'll be here that's coming in September that focuses on community building and reestablishing those community connections. It says, when do you expect this? It's ongoing.
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 Any questions or things that you want PAC to consider prioritizing for 2026?
But it's planned that September is also suicide awareness month, so maybe with the community building, maybe when asking me.
Yeah, no, not because we aren't interested in your opinions, we're just sort of sticking with the agenda. Cool.
I apologize, I cannot keep my mouth shut.
It's okay, it's
But
okay.
I will forget and never come back.
Gotcha. Okay, so anything else from council on public arts and culture? Carmen, I was just going to ask, are the veto awards still going on?
No, they're happening.
Okay.
We got to re-up. We're re-up.
Okay, okay.
All that stuff's happening.
Okay,
It's
that's in the ongoing.
it's ongoing.
Okay. All right, hearing no other questions, we'll go on to Library Commission.
Yeah, the Library Commission is very functional and has been doing a great job and is a well-oiled machine. The last meeting Elise and I were at, infrastructure and safety improvements were the focus and very specific asks in terms of under the outcomes, front curb, lighting for the Tree of Knowledge, in which we talked about solar options, that would be really interesting, and then signage to make sure that the parking lot is safe. And as I recall, Lisa, all of those things were being worked on actively.
Yes.
Everything was on track.
Yes.
All right, any questions or additions for the Library Commission? All right, next up is Finance and Investment Committee. I guess I could take this one. We shared some of the kind of things that we're trying to work through in the finance. We're trying to do it in the summaries, and then I think it was 2 meetings ago, we shared the kind of upcoming agenda items. So the main purpose continues to be, understanding our finances, particular, budget, short and long-term, capital needs, and then aligning the investment strategies accordingly, as it says here. Utility rates are kind of popping up on the agenda here soon. We talked about in the housing retreat, we'll be looking more at the loss in place pro forma. So I think we've gone over this. I'm just trying to rattle off a few of the things that are coming up. Are there any other things that folks have questions about, or things you were hoping that Finance Committee would be looking into this year? All right. Next up is YSDC.
All right, I will jump on this one. Purpose, as listed here, collaborative body that can provide the insights and flexibility needed to advance, encourage, and promote industrial and economics and civic development. As you know, I've been leading the charge in trying to define what economic development actually is as it pertains to Village Council and us over here on the dais, and what we can and should control versus what outside entities should take the lead on. YSDC in general, as Carmen and I sit on that body, has been wrapped primarily up in hot button issues such as the hardware store for the most part. But again, bringing it back to us, I think the more pertinent kind of summary of what we are trying to do is kind of solidify this plan that was never either, let's not say codified, but kind of brought to our table. The CICs, such as YSDC, can have a broad set of powers across the village, such as borrowing money, providing loans, buying, leasing, selling, retail, personal property and businesses. They can apply and administer grants, all of which would be legal. We just really haven't defined what we want our relationship to be with them. And so that is what Carmen and I will continue to spearhead and kind of drill down on that. Also, I'm already moving forward with the other entities. So hopefully this will be sooner than later. I don't foresee this being a years-long goal. I foresee this being done in the next few months, really. Everyone on YSDC is pretty confident in where their roles and responsibilities lie, and I think it's really just a matter of putting the language out there and telling that story to the community, to ourselves.
So does that mean, has the conversation started about the idea of coming up with the plan?
Yeah. I
Okay.
think a lot of people were caught off guard, right? Because it's not like we're operating outside of the scope of anything.
Yeah.
Everyone is well in line. But I think as the back and forth is that we've never really drilled down, though. We went wide, and I think YSDC is doing a phenomenal job in attempting to do what they can with the means and the resources they have. But I think right now we're at a point where we should clearly define where the village, and village meaning over here, this group, council, staff, where we interface and how much we want to be associated and how much we want to invest, and let them take the lead, or vice versa.
Cool. So, yeah, that would be great. In the past, you probably already know this, but there was, 2 years ago, we did like a joint YSCC, meeting, like council and YSCC. And it was like, we've talked about having more clarity of giving direction from council. So I'll assume that y'all will let us know if that would be helpful at some point. Like if you hit points where you're, deciding on role or deciding on responsibilities or needing direction. Because there was this kind of like awkward thing for years where it was like, YSCC was the economic development arm of the village, but then they were looking for direction, but then the
Definitely, and
council
YSDC
gave
also has a
direction.
scope of their work that doesn't have to fall within the purview of what the council does as well, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So I think that really just helps each of us understand that we're on the same highway, but which lanes we're in.
Yep.
Why is there not an multidisciplinary team?
For YSDC.
Why is somebody from the junior high, why is somebody from
We can
the
talk off.
faculty, why is somebody from-
All right, we can talk offline. Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions for Sinai or Carmen on YSDC? Okay, the next up is active transportation.
So they've had one meeting since I've been on council.
Yeah.
They just had to postpone the meeting that was to be a few days ago, earlier this week. So they're restructuring. I think Gary is taking over as the chair, but they were still working all that out, so I still have no update. Like, I try to email Judy to just go, I don't know anything yet. Yeah, and so I thought that there would be a meeting, and then we would have a whole thing, and then too many people couldn't come, so they put it off, so.
So this is a helpful clarification, right? So that Active Transportation Committee does not sit outside, is not hosted out of the village or out of council, but there's representation both of Planning Commission and council on it.
They have some, like, from Greene County Public Health also. Yeah, there's other, yeah.
So I think we talked about like at the goals, our initial retreat, we've had multiple now, but this is different from the other commissions because it's not like a formal environmental commission, PAC commission, whatever. I guess PAC commission is duplicative, huh? PAC, just the first C of the PAC. Anyway, I think figuring out as you start having meetings, if there's more clarity or more like question of what might be helpful to send their way or what might be helpful from us to send to them, just keep us posted.
For sure.
Yeah, cool. Anything else on active transportation? All right, and then last is village mediation program.
So the Village Mediation Program, there's not much information on it. So it's established and funded by the Village of Yellow Springs, established in 1900 and who? 1986, 88, something like that.
1900. I thought we were going to go way before.
1908?
The year of our Lord. Yeah. So they provide mediations, the Village Mediation Program does exactly what it says it's going to do. It provides mediation services for the Village of Yellow Springs, for zoning has used mediation services. YSPD has used mediation services. I know that the current director, Brady Burkett, has done mediations on the spot in the Emporium and other places. Very, committed to having two parties that agree to mediation to, mediate and work it out and come up with an agreement, not going to find, hey, you need to mediate, That's not what they do. But, things are going well with mediation. And personally, I'm not like especially when it comes to mediation, this town is too small. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. It's not, because it's critically important that the people that are using these services are, their privacy is protected. So it's good, it's going good.
So is it safe to say, so basically the goal is to keep providing mediation services?
Keep providing mediation services.
So that's the ongoing?
So I will provide a memo because there may be some structural stuff coming up.
Okay.
But I'll provide a memo when and if that happens.
Cool.
Can I ask, like, why Village Mediation Program is in this commissions and committees list in the same way that, you know, the youth program that's run downstairs is also funded and supported by council and by the village, but, you know, that's a program that's not on this list, and Village Mediation is on this list.
Well, we have a council liaison to that program
Oh, okay.
and provide funding, and then that program provides services to, not to, but through the police department.
Okay.
Like, they'll recommend mediation for certain situations, or same with planning and zoning, it'll happen. So there's kind of a little bit of professional overlap, I guess.
Okay.
So was the liaison set up when the program was set up? So it just always had a liaison?
I have to go back and look at all of the different
Like
iterations. There- 91, they
91,
redid it.
There was a,
Yeah.
so for the most part, yeah. By 1900.
But the youth program is funded by the nations.
So, yeah, that's a piece of it for sure. So what you're just trying to figure out is what delineates something that's listed and then checked in about every year and, or every month, I guess, when we have it on each meeting. So
Yeah.
it's just, this is the list of things that we have a formal liaison for, essentially.
Yeah, and which is that we expect report outs on,
Yeah.
in terms of there's a problem, there's not a problem, we need this or we need that.
Yeah.
And then some of them obviously are more active than others, but
Okay.
it's just traditionally been there. I guess one could remove it if you had a mind to, but then it would just, the information would run through the village manager and wouldn't come back to council necessarily, so. Unless you asked.
Okay. I think that's it. Unless anybody has any questions, I'm just going to make a note. I kept the earlier one about, Sinai mentioned the PPM, checking in next year. This also begins the things to talk about next year. So I think this is one that's like, we did it a little later this year because it's like a new council, new goals and everything, but it could be earlier next year. So just keeping in mind as you think about your commission calendar, earlier goals. Great. All right, I think that's it for this agenda item, board and commissions. And now I'm going to pass it over to Angie for follow-up discussion on the housing retreat.
Great. Okay, so we have two sections. We have follow-up discussion, and then the second part continues. It's like looking at the list of goals that we made and prioritizing them. And we put some initial thoughts about who would work on what, but I also thought we could look at tagging on some dates just to hold ourselves accountable. So the first thing is that we had a discussion at the end of the day about what would be the best format to move forward in talking about affordable housing goals and priorities, and really discussing a committee versus a commission and all the ways in which pros and cons. There was a general agreement to keep it as a committee right now as we continue to finalize what we actually want to do, and continue the momentum of those conversations that have already started, especially from the retreat. And then to plan another retreat in June, not as long. It seems like we've really tightened down the focus, so it could be perhaps a half day. And then at that point to make some space to return and discuss again committee versus commission. So I thought that was a good general direction, gives us the next couple months to continue working, but then revisit the pros and cons of those two formats. I was gonna have a radical idea and say, we're all here, let's look at June and try to set a date. Or at least a couple of options.
I gotta have my piece of paper. I'm old.
I'll give you a piece of paper, Judy. I'll give you a piece of paper.
No, I mean my calendar
She has
piece of
a-
paper.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't have a physical?
It's a gigantic.
No,
Or
I
how
don't.
about, can we just
What if there was it's short out?
can we
I
just
could-
say if anybody's out of town in June, or if there's any days that people cannot do in June? Would that be helpful?
Forge ahead. Yes. Do
I
it.
told you it was gonna be radical.
Definitively the first week of June.
If you wanted staff's opinion on that, I would just avoid getting, as we get close to street fair, our
Yep.
schedules get really crazy.
Okay, so street fair is the
Second Saturday.
13th, and you said you're going to be gone the first week of June. So we're talking about the 3rd, 4th, or 5th week of June?
Nice.
Or,
Yeah.
I mean, there's 2 days
Okay, yep.
in the 5th week.
So, but one of them's a Monday? One of them's a Monday? That works great, because we're kind of geared for the Monday thing. Just saying.
The 15th?
She's talking about the last Monday.
Oh, the last Monday, the 29th.
But I'm not looking at paper, so
Okay, so,
you guys
so,
do what
so all
you
we're
need.
saying is it's not going to be the 1st or 2nd week of June. And there's some interest in the last Monday, which is June 29th.
Which is July 4th weekend.
So is anybody, any other comments right now? Judy, we just gave you a little bit of information.
Okay.
The only other thing I'll throw in is I think we didn't get it on the agenda this time, but next time we talking about the summer meetings.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's also, I think,
Summer meetings thing.
maybe the case to say, instead of doing 2 meetings in June, we do 1 meeting in June and then do the retreat. So then instead of adding, like, the 29th, we might just do, maybe that's too soon after the 15th, too soon after street fair, but you could always just cancel 1 meeting and then add 1 later. Anyway, so this is the,
Can you just do that? You have to notice them.
Well, I mean, in advance. I think Kevin's
We would
anticipating that we would know.
Code and cancel and notice way in advance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so noted that we'll look at those Monday dates as options.
I'm down for whenever.
Great. Okay, and then so the other 2 topics, while we continue to function as a committee, I would say is who will be serving, since we need to appoint the 2 council members to be on that, and then how often we would like to meet until, let's say, end of June or mid-June. I thought we could just decide those two topics right now. Shocking to everyone, I would like to be involved.
With the, yeah, absolutely. With the work and the research that I've done over these last 10 years, I think it's imperative that I'm a part of that.
Yeah, I was kind of looking forward to being on that, so.
yeah. So I think this, Carmen, we were kind of bumping into this at the retreat. So I think part of the reason why we kept it in committee land is
Right.
that at the June meeting, and then hopefully at meetings in between, everybody's keeping, like, everybody's interested, right? So I don't know if we need, like, is this like if we have 3 people that are interested, do we need to vote on 2 people? Or is there like a, we can figure it out, we're all on the same page kind of thing?
I mean, in the past, you have voted when you just had, well, too many people want to do this, and that seems the fair way to go about it. You don't have to do it at this meeting. You don't have to do it that way. But it is, you know,
The other dynamic, of course, so just going to the second part of the question is, there's the who's on it, and then there's also the how often does it meet, or what is the sort of formation? And I'm assuming that's a Johnny,
Right, I think that if we're going to have this conversation about a housing committee, Johnny needs to be involved with the conversation. Before we make a vote, before we have any decision-making up here tonight, Johnny needs to be involved. Elise, you're great, but I think that Johnny and maybe our potential PZA needs to be involved.
well, the
Before we
who's
start.
on, who from council is going to be on the committee won't change. It's what is the makeup of that group? How is it going to function? That's, yeah,
And,
yes,
and
that's a-
also, I don't feel comfortable moving, just for the record, I don't feel comfortable moving forward on any conversation about it without Johnny. That could just be me, though.
other folks want to weigh in on that?
I mean, I'm not going to jump 2 feet forward. I think we got a lot accomplished at the housing retreat. And so the rest what we're talking about now is kind of like finishing touches. As long as we are not losing momentum, and it sounds like committee versus commission, that's my biggest thing. And as long as we understand that we are bringing this back for a reason, this committee or commission, and it's because it is a high priority of this council, and the understanding of like how much work and knowledge and due diligence is going to be needed in this. It's going to be a heavy lift, and so I'm ready to move forward with in any way, shape, or I'm not saying we have to vote right now. But I think this is a massive priority, right? And so it needs to be handled with also as much delicacy, but also urgency. My roundabout way of talking in a circle.
I mean, I have one idea, which is, you know, we knew Johnny was going to be out today, and we
Sure.
decided to still put this on the agenda
Right.
because of what Sinai said. It's like, we're not making any massive decision, or it really was just like, hey, let's set a general next meeting in 2 weeks or in a month. So to continue the momentum, and also just to determine the council members who will be working on it, which Johnny anyways wouldn't vote in that. I have an idea, which is we could talk about the priorities that we outlined. So, this 30-minute chunk, when we just jumped to, we could look at the list of the issues and kind of who was interested in what and who wanted to spend time where. And maybe that will help us think about how we share the work. Because I want us just to be accountable towards moving ahead. There's a lot of energy, and I do agree with Gavin. Everyone's going to be involved. Everybody's going to pull their weight, because I know that all of us care about this deeply. So is that okay with everyone? Let's move to the actual goals and review them, and then hop back into thinking about who, where, when.
Yeah, that sounds good to me, because there are several action items that
Yeah.
people could that could be a strategy, is move things essentially independently or in the groups that we agreed on at the retreat, and then think on it, talk about it at the next meeting. The main thing is that we keep talking about it at these meetings, then I think the momentum will continue. If we don't, then that's when it'll probably stop.
Yeah.
So go for it.
Okay, great. So this prioritization, I'll just say that in the memo, one of the things we discussed was being clear with ourselves and with our community. Why do we care about affordable housing? What is the guiding principle? Why we're working on it? And what does it mean? So one of the things that we talked about is formulating a affordable housing mission statement. And so I just put in two quick paragraphs that kind of summarized the paragraph that starts with the Village of Yellow Springs, ends with must also be a priority, to just start us on the path of how we're going to talk about this, and that it becomes our guiding light of we're going to have to make decisions, and when we make decisions, what are we looking towards? And that will also include more definitions, and I felt like we actually did a lot of great work on getting on the same page about what it means in a practical way. So that's that first part. And then we came down and we had these different topics. So, reminding everyone, we had 6 topics. Everybody rated kind of their priorities. The first, and I put them in here kind of in order of priority. So the goal setting, that's what I just described. We clarified it means setting targets for types of housing needed in the village, using updated data from the new Bowen report, which is supposed to be coming out shortly. We talked about myself working on that with the new planning and zoning administrator. And then clarifying this housing mission statement, definitions and priorities of the village, also same people. The next topic that was of priority was about rentals, and we nailed down kind of 2 topics, having a dedicated conversation about code enforcement in rentals, and then also having a dedicated conversation about rental registries, how they work, benefits, examples. And Stephanie was interested in both of those topics. The next topic we talked about was Glass Farm. We spoke about having an appraisal done of the property, and then that expanded to talking about a bigger appraisal of all village properties to understand options, opportunities, priorities for housing projects. And that was with Johnny and Elise. We talked about putting out an RFP for the Glass Farm site by the end of the year. Another date was also thrown out of potentially doing that even sooner. We talked about wanting a clear community engagement process about Glass Farm that Stephanie was interested in leading, the different ways that we've seen engagement, including town halls, but also another idea was to explore having a community-wide poll. And then in talking about Glass Farm, having a thorough, comprehensive compilation of all existing documents. This was directly about the concerns about wetlands conservation and some of the documents that were brought up in citizen concerns last time. And that was situated with the village with Johnny and Elise. We already mentioned this earlier, but in talking about zoning, it was evaluation of current zoning code to identify pain points and how to best make progress towards our housing goals as defined. And then also updating the definitions in our zoning using Yellow Springs or Dayton statistical area data. And we have Amy and Judy and the new administrator. We spoke about Lawson Place being a site of affordable housing that the village is currently running and maintaining. And so looking at the current data, the pro forma, I believe, that will be conducted by the end of 2026 to understand the numbers, and then from there, developing our approach to Lawson Place and potential for other sites of affordable rentals. The last was looking into fees on vacant properties. This is I know some people have already asked, so if people are watching, the definition of vacant properties is in the packet from the housing retreat, and it's not just what you would imagine as vacant. There's a larger definition. Feel free to look there to learn more. And the idea there is to look into options and examples. There's a lot of places that are doing this type of work. And Sinai was interested in leading that charge, both because we're talking about residential properties as well as commercial properties. So those are the priorities that came out at the end of our day. And I think part of this section was just to, I think just to review it with Carmen in terms of the priority areas. Again, rentals and Glass Farm were very closely tied in their numbers, let's say, their rankings, and then the other three kind of came lower.
So, if I understand correctly, in some ways, the simplicity of having a committee is that it's like, that's the place where all the things would get decided, that somebody would take all this and then start working on it. And the reason you can only have 2 people on it is because you can't have more than 2 council people for sunshine law.
Right.
But if essentially we were to break out, so for example, well, the first one that I'm seeing that's, Angie, like you started to work on the housing mission statement. If Angie worked on the housing mission statement and then sent it to us, like you already did, and then if Stephanie worked on the rentals and then brought those memos back, if everybody sort of worked independently and then brought it here, that's okay, right?
So that would eliminate, that is really actually a pretty efficient, and it would eliminate a commission or a committee.
Functionally, yeah, until there was some point at which it was like, I think it's like, if we can hold ourselves accountable and move balls down the field, then, I mean, we're acting like a committee, but
what's
here.
Judy? The goalpost finger.
Except that for some things, you just need some staff input, like, well, hey, but if I want to do this thing, and what then would have to happen with the zoning code, or what then would have to happen with staff, and there are costs. So the upside of having a committee is that you should have the people in the room who can go, great idea, let's figure out how much it would cost. Oh, you're sitting here, how much would that be? Like, you can kind of gather that information in that meeting. Which doesn't mean it couldn't happen this way. It's just if everyone understands, all right, I'm going to get my ball of information and bring it to council, and then council's going to say, go forth, and have a meeting with the village manager or a meeting with, that's the part where you still have to circle back, I think, and have a committee that's got your finance director, your village manager, planning zoning person, your AVM, those folks who can all give you the rest of the pieces to keep moving forward.
In this hypothetical, could we, let's say we set up a meeting for end of May. There's, with me and staff. And if I am meeting with Stephanie beforehand, and she sends me a list of things that the rental registry needs, and Sinai sends me a list of things he needs, and Carmen sends me a list of questions she has for staff, they're all communicating to me separately about different topics, and I'm representing council and bringing that to staff. Is that an option?
I'd have them direct it all to Judy.
Okay. So how is,
Is there not a spreadsheet?
So each of you would, Angie would say, here's what I'm getting ready to do. Can you ask folks these questions? Then I send it out. You send your stuff back only to me. I make sure staff has all that information, so when Angie walks into that meeting, she's walking into a meeting where everyone's got each of those pieces of information from all you guys.
I'm interested in this because it's a new style of how to work, but it's a topic that we all care a lot about and want to work on and want to discuss in this format altogether. So it's like, are there topics that we can just channel to the staff if we need to discuss that, but start to make more space on the regular agenda to talk about housing concerns and our goals?
Well, so just a thought, but, I mean, you've clearly identified this as your very much overarching goal. You have work sessions as something that you do. I mean, if you had if you devoted a work session every month and your other things were maybe more agenda items or whatever, you'd all be in the room, you'd all be doing the stuff, you'd all have hands on it. It wouldn't mean staff didn't have to do things behind the scenes.
Sure.
And that one of you might get pulled to say, can you give me this information you mentioned at the last meeting? But it would keep all of you with your hands in it.
I think I'm open, but I like the work session just because it feels like there's less like game of telephone that could happen.
Right, and as far as, community members being able to watch it happening, I think
Yeah.
questions are answered in those meetings a lot.
Yeah. Okay, so a thought would be, maybe you were going to already, sorry if I'm, but could we go over these topics and could people say, here's when I think I might be able to be working on this by? Because I think if I'm hearing right, we're talking about sort of people work independently on their projects, then we set work sessions at a regular basis to check in on said projects or overall housing questions. Is that, okay.
And
So-
no, and is this a short-term solution, or is this something that we're going to try?
I think it's at least through June.
Okay.
Because it's like, hopefully we'll have a new planning and zoning administrator, and hopefully several of these things are like, if we set a housing mission statement, then that should drive how we think about several of these questions. Once we have dedicated conversations about code enforcement and rental registries, then we would have action items about them potentially.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. So I think the answer is, yeah, it's a temporary, kind of get the ball moving and then keep revisiting it.
Yeah, I think we should try it and see if it works or not, and I think if there's any sense of it's inefficient or it's not working out for us, then
Yeah.
we can go back to the other options. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just think, if we all say, here's when we think we can do it by, it sets up a level of accountability where it's like, hey, are you, you're moving your ball down the field or not? And then we talk about it, right?
So, and I don't want to make more work for Elise, but a thought, because I know you're all about the strategic plan, and I haven't wrapped my head entirely around it, but some of the things that you want to do rely somewhat on gathering data, getting a poll, getting information from villagers, doing a thing, before you can move it, forward into, well, okay, so we want this kind of a thing. If there was some smart person who could sort of lay this out in terms of, this needs to precede this, you can start this right now, like sort of order it in that manner. Doesn't stop you from doing all this tonight, but I just think timelinishing it, that's kind of an Elise thing, unless all are better at like, okay, we need this information before we go forward with this stuff. We need cost data before we really move on this thing. There's just so many moving parts, and I've seen it jam it up in the past.
There are a lot of moving parts, but, with, I don't mean any disrespect to anybody up here, but there doesn't have to be. There doesn't have to be. We have so many models that we can follow. It's as simple as so many models, and I'll bring that, but it doesn't have to be, and we have to, like, you said you don't want to do it, like, add any more work to Lisa's stuff. Well,
I said I didn't necessarily. She's going to do work. I was trying to be nice.
Right.
I hear what you're saying. I think, let's take a pass at this real quick, and then I think this would be the topic you'd have at the work session. Hey, how are these things going, and how is the flow of council and staff working on these items, and should we change the schedule at all? So let's just do a quick pass. So in terms of setting targets for types of housing needs needed in the village, using updated data, so we all know that's going to happen after we get the Bowen report, which is, what is the current expectation of when that's?
Yeah, so April 2026 was the idealistic, but I would say goal setting about housing, for us to try to give an initial pass to bring to the June 20th, whatever, the June retreat or June work session. So a draft that would be in the packet that council members could review and then come back with feedback and questions.
Okay, so I'm just going to keep a list of, so for June, we've got targets for types of housing, right?
And clarified mission, yeah.
And you want to do clarified mission there, and, well, you've already sent a version, so
Yeah, well, yeah.
it'll go in then.
Yeah.
So, and in the meantime, if you read the mission version that's in the packet and you have feedback, send it to Angie, right? Or no, is that where we have to send it to Judy? Send it to Judy, and then Judy will compile it and send it to Angie.
After she
Right?
sends it to us.
I'm just,
Yep,
yeah?
yep.
Okay, that's just, okay. I didn't mean that as, I was, okay. The next one, clarify housing mission, okay, we just did that one. And then
Rentals.
rentals.
Stephanie, what do you think?
I have a meeting on May 11th with someone from the Dayton Tenants Union will be there, maybe the Athens Tenants Union, and someone from the, of course, Community Foundation will have the meeting there. But so those conversations will start on May 11th.
So do you think, and we'll see here how much we overload a June meeting, but if you're talking about May 11th, I think for me
Well,
this would
starting
go.
those,
Yeah,
as a
so
group.
do you think, is it conceivable that by sort of the second half of June, that you might have like I'm imagining this as sort of a short memo, a page or two that says,
Oh, easy.
here is what's relevant on this issue, and here are the questions that would frame the dedicated conversation. Does that sound like late, second half of June seems possible?
For sure.
Okay, so then we'll come back over this. If we say second half of June for everything, then it might not be a 4-hour meeting, we might need to split it up, but let's just start there. Okay, so both rentals things. All right, and then Glass Farm, we can punt this and check in about it at the next meeting is fine. If you have something to say, jump in, but otherwise, we'll say this will be a check-in with Johnny. And then the RFP is still a everybody acknowledges we want to move forward with it. We had talked about, by December 26th, the original goals. At the retreat, we talked about maybe it would be by April. Anyway, we'll figure it out. Everybody knows we want to prioritize it, but that's not going to go on the June list. Community engagement process. Stephanie, what's your kind of initial thinking about sort of mapping out what community engagement might look like on the Glass Farm project?
I can get with Elise or Johnny on that, as far as fitting something into the timeline with what they're doing. But that's what I would, if we're holding up on getting information, it would be nice to have, I'm sure, some of that information before we engage so openly.
Cool.
Yeah, it seems very coordinated, that compilation of documents, information, history.
Yeah.
So my initial reaction is that, and then the next one that I had brought up the idea of doing some formal polling in sort of addition to or supplementing the idea of community engagement in the more formal, traditional sense of like, town halls or whatnot. That those sound like things that maybe could happen by the second half of June, but probably don't need to per se. Like, it seems like some of this like structural goal setting stuff might come first, and this might be like the, July or.
Further down the line.
Does that sound right to y'all?
I mean, it takes, we think about what kind of data you're going to gather, especially with community polls and what you're going to use the data for, like to what end. So maybe the other stuff can happen a little bit before this so that we have a better idea about what we're even getting into.
Okay. I'm going to keep going, I think that's where I'm seeing folks landing. So then the next one here is zoning. So this one also feels like it's after we've got some of the targets and mission stuff. So that would also be like now the updating definition for affordable housing to include a statistical area could conceivably happen quite quickly. But the other piece around updating the zoning code, that might be like a July-ish kind of thing? Or I'm kind of making a June and then a July or later category. Okay. And then Lawson Place, do we have a timeline on the pro forma?
Yeah, we have a meeting, I believe the week Johnny gets back, so for an update on that, and then we'll have clarity on how soon, how far away, but I think that it's nearing the end of completion.
Okay.
So we're thinking about, going back to evaluation of current zoning code to identify pain points and how to best make progress toward goals for 2027. So you said July for that?
I was saying that it would be kind of after June,
I know, but it does say 2027. I don't really remember why that's in there. I don't remember why.
I think maybe we just acknowledge that probably it was going to not be until 27 that we would get to the actual zoning code changes, because we'd be doing like analysis this year, but.
Okay.
And the new person, like there's a new person who's going to be doing a lot of onboarding. This is important to
That makes
us,
sense.
but let's be realistic.
That makes
time.
sense. Yeah.
Okay, so then Lawson Place, that would be in the category of, it sounds like it'll be like probably a managed report kind of thing anyway, that when you get the information back and then scheduling some time to talk about it. And then fees on vacant properties. I feel like we're doing economic development next month, so this is also
It's probably right along, so whenever, this is a sooner than later one. This will be the first one, so if we want it by the June meeting or before.
Okay, and so that one feels like it's the most kind of on the edge to me, based on the prioritization and based on the amount of things on the June meeting.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just write it down as around June, depending on if we can get that into a 4-hour meeting, and if not, bump it and then.
We'll be prepared, don't
Order. Okay.
I have two more thoughts that I realized I did not capture in this memo now that we're talking about it. One is that we did talk about the zero emission ready homes and conservation, and as I remember, part of what we were saying is that is a lens in which we should be looking at all of, these different opportunities.
You're right, it falls in line with the comprehensive land use plan and the climate action and sustainability plan. All the cool kids are doing it. And in my opinion, nothing else can go on Glass Farm.
Exactly. So when we were talking about Glass Farm, I think in response to the concerns about conservation, and then talking about the different ways to build, the different developers, we talked about the different formats we could do that. I remember that was an example of like, we would want, going into that process to make that a priority on the RFP. So it's not on here, but it was definitely a lens in which, we're also talking about rentals. If we're going to be talking about code enforcement, which ways does that intersect? So that's definitely represented, and I think part of it was like, if EC is doing this community education work, we're gonna be coming to EC and saying, hey, Carmen, can you bring this topic, and can we get EC's opinion or thoughts on this back to us? That was one thing. Oh, and then second, Stephanie had brought up a lot of this angle of looking at it from the experience of renters or people in the community. And so Stephanie had, in several places here, talked about like, how do we engage the community? How do we keep the community updated? What are the processes in which we include them? And so I think as we think about our format of how we want to do this work, I think there could be a real value in having two, when we have the two people designated, that one of the council members that's like kind of a defined role is like I'm not volunteering you for anything that you don't want to do, Stephanie, but I think it's like you pinpointed that early on, and I do think, and we all know, that making progress in this field is challenging. The village has tried to do it, different organizations are working really hard on it, and part of it is just a lot of communication and a lot of engagement and making space for that discussion and learning together. And so that's another idea, is like maybe we're all working on it, but maybe one of the council members who's on whatever format we choose in the end is almost like a community liaison. Like maybe that's a different way to think about it that we haven't done before.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So I think maybe the other thing to think about, and I don't know, Carmen, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if there's like, either now or at the next meeting, if there's stuff where you're like, hey, here's stuff that I want to jump in on, because obviously.
So the Environmental Commission, we've been working for like the last year on a document. We have a document. I don't know if you've.
Yeah,
we have
it was in the packet.
So we have a document. We have some additional information on specifically zero energy ready housing. It's not called that anymore. And then we also have examples that was in the packet. Yeah, there's also examples or links of examples of communities that are doing it. So more of that. Is that so more examples, more, and we can just compile all of the stuff that we've gotten together. Is that what you're asking for?
Yeah. No, I was just, I think what ended up in these bullet points in the memo are the things that were like on the whiteboard, and then we just were like kind of, I'll do this, I'll do that, and since you weren't there, I'm just making sure if there's stuff where you're like, hey, I really want to get involved. But I think the conservation development and the, what's the right word? Examples, or the, comp projects, or the models. There we go. So.
Yeah, and I think we should add that. I think we should add that in here.
Yeah.
Like, I think it needs to be represented. And I don't even know if there's other examples of how to define how EC works with, how these two bodies work together in tandem. But it could be something like the conservation, energy efficiency is integrated into the work of the Housing Committee through the tandem partnership with EC or something. But I think it would be good to define that. I can work on that too.
Okay. Okay. So the other thing that we talked about, and so Angie, I'm going to see if I think maybe we're moving toward closure on this.
Yeah.
So it's like we've got the kind of beginnings of a June meeting, and then some other things coming up in July. I know when I was looking at the future agenda stuff, I feel like we're due for like a more, here's where we're going. Like we kind of got through this first chunk of time, and then it's like, all right, here's what the next, quarter looks like. So I know I could probably get an update together and then bring it to agenda planning and then bring it back. Then we could look at it as kind of like we did with the goals, We said, here's the goals and here's where they'd fall on the calendar. There's enough more pieces here that we should sort of figure out how these things flow out over the next several months. So maybe we do that and then check back in about that at, the next meeting. And then the other part was, we talked about goals, like getting the housing goals into the actual goals document. So these are functionally the goals from the retreat. Remember, we did the goals document for the year, and we said,
Yeah.
come back after the retreat. So now, I don't know, Angie, do you want to take a stab at that, of basically filling in these items into the goals and then bring that back for the next meeting?
I mean, or with Elise, or like with Elise's lead, I feel like Elise knows that document best. And
Sure.
then it'll be consistent with the format she's been working with.
I'll start it, Angie, and then I'll pop it to you.
Sounds great, yeah. And I'll work on that line about the conservation. I'll check in with Carmen that we use the right wording, and then include that as one of the goals as well.
Okay. Was there anything else on follow-up from discussion about the housing retreat or clarification and prioritization of housing goals?
No, just appreciate everyone's enthusiasm. It was like a long day, but I think there was a lot of good momentum.
Cool. Okay. We're going to move on to new business, of which there is none, and so we will move on to boards and commissions. Are there any board and commission updates that folks have?
Nothing to report. We weren't able to have our last EC meeting, and we had a very sparsely attended PACC meeting, but we were on the heels of Jeremy Turner speaking at the, help me, Ben. Senior Center. Thank you very much. Just like a senior. Yeah, the senior center in the great room. We had a pretty good turnout. I think there were 70 people there. In conjunction with the Caesars Ford Theater. It was good.
70 is great.
70 is good, yeah.
I heard great things about it.
That's all I got. What's up? Oh, yeah. Oh. Yeah, thanks. I'm so happy that you're here. So we had a crazy marathon of interviews. What day was that? Was that Wednesday last week? So we were here from what until when? Like 1 until
4:30.
4:30, almost 5, yeah. So we interviewed 5 people during that time. And so would you like to nominate, or shall I, or shall we tag team?
Go for it. Yeah.
So we had a really good turnout of interviewees. One of them we interviewed while they were in their forklift.
Via Zoom.
Via Zoom. That was really cool.
Wait, that's not a joke. That's
That's
like a-
yeah. They were in a crane, yeah, crane, and like, I don't know, 100 feet in the sky or something like that. But, so, let's see. You can nominate the crane person, and then I'll just nominate the rest of everybody, I guess.
Okay. So I would like to nominate John Search to the Public Arts and Culture Commission.
Can we do all this at once? Can we do the nomination?
You could nominate everyone at once if you're nominating them all to full
Yes,
membership.
we're nominating them all.
Can you list the names first, though? Because I feel
Okay,
like I
sure.
left somebody out of here.
So there is John Search. All right, we'll just do it like this. Also nominating Noel Welsh. Also nominating Alan Rainey. Oh, also nominating Kasia Svensson. And then
Brian Mayer.
Brian Mayer. And that-
Brian
will probably be an
Mayer.
alternate, probably.
Okay.
Was that?
So just as long as, if you have someone who's being nominated as an alternate, just do that one separately.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're nominating all the main one, the
Yeah, so I think
full ones, and
it's
then
going to
you'll do
have to
the,
be, and then we're going to have to do, that's what, okay, yep.
so is there a, it sounds
the
like
other alternate-
first and, oh, good.
The other alternate is Noel Welsh.
So you got,
So let's first, I think she's saying do
And
all the
then-
ones that are full-time members first. So the full-time members are,
is it Rainey Search Svensson?
Yes,
so those three are being nominated for full
yes.
spots? Okay, and so are you, that Carmen nominating and then Stephanie, you seconding? Or, sorry, is that?
Yes.
Okay. So are there any questions? I think my only question is just, did something happen that led to like so many all at once?
Oh, and we had, there are people who decided that they didn't have time, or, got new jobs that didn't allow for them to get here on time. So we had a big push for people to join.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, all those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, that's the first three. Congratulations to those people. And then do you want to do a nomination for the alternates then? And the alternates were
Mayor and Welsh?
Mayor and Welsh?
Mayor and Welsh.
And I'll second that.
Okay, so Carmen, yes?
Yes.
First, and then, okay. Any questions? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, congratulations to those folks as well.
Yay.
So does that mean that is arts and culture like quote-unquote full now?
Yes.
Okay. So is everything full now, or is there still,
Environmental Commission is not full.
okay. Can I just make a friendly request that in the boards and commissions, when there's spots available, that we just put it in the agenda? That it just says, like at the bottom of boards and commissions, one spot available in, like that if we're looking for people, that we say it on here?
I feel like it's up to the liaison to say, hey, because I'll tell you there's some gray area. I
What
don't.
does that mean?
Like, oh, this person said they wanted to quit and they probably aren't, or they've missed X number of meetings, so, but we're not sure, but they might stay, but
Right, so with so to answer your question, we don't know. I mean,
we know when we
Sometimes
put
we
it out,
know.
that's true.
sometimes we know. Sometimes we know definitively and sometimes we don't. Now, if that's problematic, then,
I'm just saying if we know definitive, like you just said, we had spot one, we just said we have one spot available for EC, right? Isn't that what you just said? If we know definitively, can we write that we're trying to fill the spot?
Judy, I think that you explained it, but,
I mean, I can.
but then by the time we get to the council meeting, it might be different.
I can just tell, Ben, the most effective way to get people is social media. So I say, hey, Ben, can you do a thing? And then he does a thing. And then pretty soon thereafter, we start getting inquiries, as opposed to the Yellow Springs News when it's usually a ringing silence. And that just has to do with how people are accessing stuff and what they're in the mood for when they're accessing those things. So it works, so I could just have him print off the thing.
Okay, maybe I'll say it a different way. I would like it to be listed because it's, from my understanding, there was a large chunk of time that went by that I had no idea that we didn't have full commissions, and I feel like if there's a reason, like we have the commissions, it would just be good for us to know, hey, what's going on with them? How many, are there spots available? Because we had positions that were to be filled for a while, right?
Can we
I don't
just
see why this would
say
be-
that when we're giving our reports? Can we just,
Sure.
just make it a point that we always share that?
I think what happens is that functionally, if nobody says on a report, then nobody says anything about the thing for a while, and then you don't know.
Sure.
Well, then I just would say
But I
that
think
we'd
let's
be
defer.
more accountable.
Yeah, let's defer back to, yeah, absolutely, yeah. But then also deferring back to what Judy said was that it's more nuanced than that. So I can't say definitively who's going to not be on Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't asking us to
We'll
say.
put something in there.
Yeah, I wasn't asking to put on something for people that you're not sure about. I just, if I understand correctly, there are definitive spots. There have been, we're publicizing it, right?
Yes,
Right.
they're
I'm
publicized.
just trying to, so that I know,
So
hey,
you
here's
just
what
want
we're
them
looking for.
on the agenda instead of just on social
Just
media?
just under boards and commissions, just at the bottom of section 8 on this agenda, just a little asterisk. We are currently seeking X. That's all. Okay. Are there other committee or commission reports? Okay, I have one from Finance Committee. I'm a little bummed that Riley left, because I feel like this is like, I'd like there to be
We'll let
the
him know.
trail of breadcrumbs
We'll let him know. He
of the
can-
things that, we're talking about, what's going on with finances. One of our goals for this year is to have a, more understanding on council about what's happening with our finances. So.
It's 8 o'clock. We'll tell him to watch at 8 o'clock.
We could. So at the last Finance Committee meeting, longtime listeners will remember that we were looking at the conservatism of the budget and basically saying, hey, what happens if you make the budget less conservative to factor in the things that basically always or never happen. So the most, the easiest example is that we have staff benefits in as though every staff member will take all the benefits every time, and it's never happened before, and it will never happen. And so you just sort of taking out that expense as though, because it has never happened, it will never happen. So then the team went back and filled in or made those changes to those projections. And it's a significant difference. It goes from, essentially $14 million over budget by 2035 to being $1.5 million over budget, and we didn't do 2026. So as you might note from the Q4 financials, we were $700,000 over projections compared to, actuals were $700,000 more than projections. So it's a pretty common thing that we're notably over, and part of what we're doing with this is looking at how to make it more actual, more realistic. So I think at that meeting, we talked about how, last year with the budget process, there was this sort of fear of like, there's this big deficit and we've got these problems, and we still have some work to do for sure, but some of these initial sets of information are, I'd say, very positive. Other folks from finance can jump in if you're, if you have other perspective on it. The next big piece of the puzzle is accurately projecting capital expenses. So the ongoing budget of things like staff and then on the income side, income tax projections is relatively easy to project. The capital expenses can be much more significant because there'll be $1 million+ for a project that doesn't happen on some regular basis historically. What some communities are doing that we're looking at doing is capital improvement planning, so that we are consciously looking out further. Right now, we've been looking at, seems like for quite some time, there was not much future planning that happened at all. Over the last couple of years, we started moving toward sort of over the next 3 years, capital planning. And then that gets you in a little bit of trouble when you're doing like utility rates for, looking at 5 or 10-year projections, but you don't have expenses built in that are further than the 5-year projections that you're making your rates off of. So I think that piece will be another really big piece of the puzzle that'll help us understand where our finances actually are as we move toward budget season. So it's, I think, a really good and significant update based on, the information that we got from the finance team at the Finance Committee meeting. Yay!
Wait, so for me and the average layperson who's not a finance
Yeah.
junkie, that 700,000 that we thought we didn't have, when we were talking about a deficit budget, we were saying it was around 700,000. Does that mean we are essentially not with a deficit budget?
We passed a deficit budget, so the budget is
Or we're not
what
in a
it is.
deficit situation that we thought we were in?
the likelihood that we are going to have less money, more money go out than we have, more money go out than we bring in is, at this point, I'd say, quite low. So that the likelihood that we're operating in a deficit manner is very low. Just like, what was it? This happened last year and the year before that. It's been significant differences from what the projections were to what the actuals are. So it's just kind of calibrating our level of concern, and
Risk.
we're getting, and risk, yeah. And so we're getting more data to actually understand, as opposed to like, kind of worried about it without actually knowing what the numbers are, which is, we had pieces, but we're filling in the puzzle now. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes. I think there's also a piece where there was a significant lack of trust between council and administration, so people built in very deep reserves because council would often just allocate funds that weren't appropriated in the budget. So you have people on this side going, well, 7 years of famine could be following this one, so we'll just store up some of our potatoes. The more trust there is and the more transparency in the budgeting process and willingness to stick to that budget and not then allocate funds because, gosh, it sounds so good though, after the budget process means you get a whole lot less. We better keep reserves that are slightly perhaps hidden in over-conservatism. But this year, it's not, I don't think it's overly conservative. You're moving much, much closer to reality is much, much closer to the projections now. So that's just, I only say that to be a little cautious because to say, well, we know there's a whole bunch of buffer built in, that's not the case so much. I mean, Gavin's correctly identifying, well, you've got this much buffer, but how often does it happen? That's reasonable, but the whole process, it would be dangerous to characterize it as, we always do it this way, because we have done it much closer to the bone than in the past.
I'm not going to respond because there's a lot of things to unpack, but we're making progress. Like we're making, I think by any measure, we're like learning more, and then hopefully we'll be in a really good position by the budget season for all of us to have okay, I understand the level of risk and the level of, conservatism that's baked in. Okay, any other questions? Are there other commission reports? Okay, so then future agenda.
I might have one thing. It's possible at the May 4th meeting that staff will be bringing a resolution objecting to a liquor permit in front of council, and we'll provide more information at the time if that happens.
Okay. So I got housing goals inclusion at the next meeting.
Well, I've got a question about that, because for some reason I've got resolution approving the update of the housing goals. I'm not sure where that came from, except
At the next meeting?
at the next meeting, and you've just been talking about those goals. I don't know that needs to be in the form of a resolution, for sure. It came from somewhere.
Do we need a resolution for the 2026 goals?
Like when
We did. We've already
I know,
done
but
it.
the housing part was like TBD.
But we know that that's always a work in
Okay.
progress. So that's not an important thing. You do have a resolution from 2021, maybe, that sets housing goals for the village.
I don't think that's what anybody was talking
But-
about. So we're just saying, you're basically saying, it's not going to be a resolution, but updating the 2026-27 goals with the housing components would be on the next agenda. That's what we just talked about 10 minutes ago, right? Okay, and then anticipate being ready with a follow-up from last meeting with the strategic plan scope. I just want to make sort of an asterisk on that I would like to have agenda planning on Wednesday and see how full this feels like it's going to be. Because with parking expansion and economic development both on the agenda, we might just be like bloated, and it's not the end of the world if we move it. I would like to get the process moving, because it's going to take some time, but, so I'm mentioning that one. And then we kind of talked about work sessions. I think because the calendar invite needed to be updated, I kind of made a mental note of like, we talked about doing work sessions this year, and then we have been kind of swapping them for executive sessions and basically trying to keep time similar. But this goes to what we just talked about a few minutes ago. I think when I'll plan to look at the agenda, the future agenda, and then start, and we can talk about it at the agenda planning too, but make some suggestions around what we might use those work sessions for together. Okay. And then I did want to talk about the summer meeting schedule, and so that would also be because I think we talked about it last meeting, didn't put it on the schedule.
It's on the 18th.
It is on the schedule, actually.
Oh, it's on the 18th?
Yeah, it's on the 18th.
Discussion of your meetings.
Cool. There we go. Thank you.
And I will say too, the May 18th, we will have a work session, a representative from American Municipal Power that's going to come out and talk about electricity relita, so to your point earlier. So that'll be a great informational session, just to understand capacity and what's going on in the market.
Okay. And then we've got, so we're doing, I think it's okay to talk about this because everybody knows. We're doing executive session first weekend in May. I need to send you and send all of you the solicitor evaluation stuff following the same process we used. Well, Carmen and I used it, but everyone else has been we talked about it for the clerk and the village manager, comparable process for the solicitor. So this is the evaluation discussion. And then we talked about in June doing the contract discussion, right? So that's so note executive session on May 4th. Okay. Any other future agenda items?
I'd like to see us talk about proposing a moratorium on data centers. It's something that's happening all around Ohio, but I think it's something that we could look at.
You could probably just bring you a draft to look at. Is
Yeah.
that a possibility?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a
For
possibility.
sure. I can totally do that.
No, I'm,
So-
she's got one.
I know I'm game to hear about it. I'm seeing Carmen, so I think, Sinai, Angie, I care what you think, but also that's three of us, so
Don't we have a
cool.
moratorium on fracking too? Don't we have one? No, we have a resolution, anti-fracking resolution, don't we?
No, we have an anti-fracking thing. It was super political
Yeah.
football because
Yeah.
it was one of those deals where
Yeah,
you weren't allowed
one of those
to.
deals.
Yeah, but it's there.
Yep, it is there.
So, did you have, Stephanie, were you, I guess, how much are you feeling like that's gotta be next meeting versus could be the meeting after that? Like or any other
Yeah.
timing, basically, consideration on that?
Sure. I mean, soon, but yeah, I wouldn't say it needs to be crammed into the next meeting,
Okay.
but, just to at least start that conversation.
And Carmen, do you feel like you want to talk about that here? You were talking about it with the EC. Is that like
Talking about what?
data centers?
Data centers? Yeah, that's.
You game to talk about it here and give any guidance or anything? Is that?
I mean, I can put a memo together on data centers, so it can go in the packet. And
Okay,
then
I'm just making
education
sure we're
around
not, like, it feels like that's not stepping on toes. It makes
No,
sense
no,
to
no,
get some
no.
guidance here.
No.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other potential items? Okay, well, hearing none, I think we'll happy to have a motion to adjourn.
I can do that.
I'll second. All those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
What happens if someone's opposed? Does it
It doesn't
It's never
actually count on
happened.
adjournment.
Doesn't count? All right.
Nope, you don't even have to call the vote, but.
Okay, thanks, everybody.